Sanıyorum başlayabiliriz. Evet, benim kısa bir açılış konuşmam olacak. Daha sonra mikrofonu Cem hocama vereceğim. Dear students, dear colleagues, dear guests, welcome to the third undergraduate panel of the Department of American Culture and Literature. It's a pleasure to meet you all in this virtual platform. I would like to thank our senior students, our panelists, for putting so much time and energy into this event. We are all grateful to Dr. Cem Kılıçarslan for all the academic and technical help that we needed for this virtual gathering. Thank you, Cem Hocam, my longtime colleague. You all have seen the panel poster, but let me state once again, our department's required core and elective courses introduce our students to a body of knowledge and fundamental skills that are essential for them to flourish as a writer and critic. Not only a literary critic, but also a film critic, an art critic. So we're hoping that this panel will highlight this fact that we as educators take pride in. Our panelists, our senior students have already become literary critics. We are proud of you all. At the beginning of the term, in our departmental meeting, Cem Hoca informed us that his science fiction and fantasy class will hold a panel on science fiction. And we all were very happy to hear this, that we would attend a panel at the end of the spring term. Well, here we are in our department's third undergraduate panel. We are connecting from around Turkey, so we are excited to be catching up with all the requirements of the digital age. I believe this event is also on YouTube now. The panel topic today is science fiction, and this field has become more popular than ever. Let me say a few words on this enormous popularity. Science fiction has influenced many of the modern technologies we use today. It inspires us to think about the applications of technological innovation, which have oftentimes gone beyond what researchers imagined. Science fiction helps to stimulate people's imagination about the future. With each science fiction text, we're thinking about future technologies that would benefit our society. So I think science fiction is a window to peek into the future. Oftentimes, what writers have proposed in the science fiction stories or novels raised scientists' awareness and shed light on the development of modern technology, from cell phones to lasers to spacecraft and everything. So science fiction plays an indispensable part in pointing out the direction for technology that is improving our lives every single day. This is so exciting. Today, our panelists will be analyzing science fiction texts from a variety of perspectives. Let me thank once again for all the time and energy that you put into this gathering. Now I'm leaving the floor to Cem Hoca for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Ufuk Hocam. I hope you can all hear me well. Thank you for coming. Because Ufuk Hoca stole the show with telling what science fiction is all about, so just ruined my presentation, but no, that's a joke. Thank you very much for this very interesting introduction. Yes, this is an undergraduate student panel, but when we organized this, we were expecting, well, an undergraduate student panel. But the students who volunteered to be the presenters and their first drafts showed me that this is kind of a bit more than undergraduate homeworks. It's just that I had 7 individuals in front of me who were each very dedicated and very original ideas. And actually, I had the not so faint glimpse that this is a kind of a first step of their first step into the academia. What I see in front of me is actually in one sense very close to some sort of a master's thesis proposal. That is, I mean, in essence, they are not there yet, but in essence, it was there. So this is not only a panel in which a group of students will just present their papers on the subject that they found interesting, but actually a kind of a welcome ceremony that for them to into the world of academia, which I think a kind of a career just pursue. Firstly, on behalf of all the department, all the academia, I would like to just say welcome to them and congratulate in advance for their interesting presentations. And without losing too much time, maybe I should it's time to listen instead of talk. So let me just tell a couple of things about our speakers. We have 7 speakers, each of whom we're just going to focus on a subject and an analysis of a work. So we're going to hear both novels and films all together. And we're going to start with Meltem Demirören. And let me say a few things about Meltem. So as maybe you already know her, but okay, Meltem is from Istanbul, and she is interested in folklore, cultural anthropology, and post-humanities, and she has already published some works by several authors, for example, by works by William James and Friedrich Nietzsche. And she also obtained a certificate with her English translation of Gülten Dayıoğlu's İşin Çağı Çocukları, at Children of the Age, at the workshop organized by Özyeğin University. She also presented 2 papers previously. One is Desire from the Brood on Octavia Butler's dystopias at AKE University, and another on ecofeminist paradigms and reflections on Louis Adrich's The Antelope Wife at Ankara, first Ankara Undergraduate Literature Conference. So that's not her first time. And she's now a senior student in our department, and she hopes to work on a subject overlapping science fiction and fantasy, and her areas of interest are blowing her wind instruments every day. Okay, let's hear Meltem. Meltem, microphone is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Today, I will be making a presentation on my paper titled Entangled Ecologies, and this will be about a posthumanist critique of Jeff Vandermeer's The Southern Reach trilogy. Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy transports readers to the intriguing region of Area X, which is a mysterious and frightening physical environment on Earth. Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance are the 3 interrated novels of the trilogy, and Vandermeer's complex narrative structure combined with his exploration of human and non-human ecosystems blurs the boundaries between humanity and ecology, offering a posthumanist lens through which to examine the trilogy's characters. Also, I'm sure you are more familiar with Alex Garland's adaptation of the trilogy. Here is the poster. Natalie Portman was playing the protagonist of the series in this adaptation. And in this paper, I will argue in this paper and in this presentation, I argue that Vandermeer's trilogy promotes a posthumanist perspective by establishing parallels with Karen Barat's agential realism. Karen Barat's notion of posthumanism relies upon the principles of entanglement, interaction, and the concept of agential realism. It pushes the boundaries between entities, emphasizing their inseparability and coexistence. And this viewpoint has far-reaching ramifications for our understanding of reality, agency, ethics, and the interaction between materiality and discursivity. It enables a more nuanced and ethical connection with the interconnected environment around us by inviting a configuration of human-centered viewpoints. Bharat says that entanglement is not simply to be intertwined with another, as in the joining of separate entities, but to lack an independent, self-contained existence. Therefore, entities are always entangled within a network of interaction and are co-constituted by these relationships. And this challenges the notion of distrust, uh, distract isolated entities, and emphasizes the inseparability and interdependence of all phenomena. And Barat also coins the term interaction, that recognizes and underlines that entities do not pre-exist in their interactions and are not independent actors acting on one another from afar, but rather emerge from their interwoven actions and interactions. And interaction calls into question the assumption of a fixed observer, independent reality, and emphasizes how knowledge and meaning are always modified by the interactions that comprise it. Barat's concept of agential realism is a framework that integrates our ideas of entanglement and interaction. Agential realism addresses both the material and discursive components of reality, emphasizing the physical and social inseparability. And she says that crucially, an agential realist elaboration of performativity allows matter its due as an active participant in the world's becoming and in its ongoing interactivity. Therefore, reality is not only influenced by human activity or subjective experiences, but rather by the entanglement and interaction of diverse elements, including humans and non-human matter. The Southern Ridge trilogy presents a narrative that goes beyond dualism, rejecting basic dichotomies such as nature, culture, human, non-human, or subject and object. Instead, it depicts a more complex perspective of reality in which entities are linked. This non-dualistic perspective is consistent with Barat's agential realism, which questions the separation of materiality and discursivity as well as entity boundaries. And the protagonist of the first novel in The Annihilation is the biologist who reflects on the ways in which the natural world is not simply a passive backdrop to human activity, but instead an active and powerful force that shapes and influences human behavior. The biologist says there is a sense of the world around me strengthened or thickened, the weight and waft of reality more focused or determined, as if all too human dolphin eye once glimpsed staring up at me, with each new face further subsumed in the flesh that surrounds it. The tower, or the tunnel as it is named by the biologist, is one of the first accurate encounters that helps the biologist to visualize the truth about Area X, which is that it is an active and intelligent ecosystem. The fact that the creature is characterized as a tunnel by every expedition member except the biologist, who claims it is a tower, demonstrates the organism's resistance to classification or incapacity to be grasped by the naked human sight or other senses. The biologist notes that the tower breathed and the walls, when I went to touch them, carried the echo of a heartbeat, and they were not made of stone but of living tissue. And she continues by saying the tower was a living creature of some sort, and we were descending into an organism. And the tower, the fact that the tower, which is part of the area, acts as a biological rather than an inert architectural form, reveals that the interconnectedness of Area X and post-human in the sense that the creature is human-like, but not human as traditionally defined. The inner walls of the tower are filled with writings made of fungal growth that says, "Where lies the strangling fruit that comes from the hand of the stone, of the sinner, I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead to share with the worms. And later in the third book of the trilogy, Acceptance, it is revealed that Saul Evans, who was a former preacher and the keeper of the lighthouse in the Area X, turned into the tower, and the words came to him after he was prickled by the strange plant outside the lighthouse. So they are a hybrid of human and an inhuman expression. And it is clear to see that this imagery suggests a connection between the natural world and the divine, further emphasizing the interconnectedness of all things. And Bharat's focus on the entanglement of matter and meaning is particularly pertinent here, since the tower acts as a tangible expression of the character's entanglement with their environment. And according to Bharat, a materiality and meaning are mutually implicated. There is no meaningful existence interdependent of materiality. In addition to that, as the biologist leaned into the um, into the writings on the walls, she was also infected by the fungal growth on the walls. She was infected by those spores, and this infection cloned the biologist and led to the emergence of a new sentient being called Ghostbird. And Ghostbird's transformative journey is highlighted in the third book, Acceptance again. I quote, raging against her own death, she had exulted in the sensation of the sea, welcomed having to fight her way to the surface, bursting through such a joyful hysteria of biomass as a sort of proof that she was not the biologist, that she was some new thing that could, wanting to survive, cast out her fear of drowning as belonging to another. So, by declaring she was not the biologist, that she was some new thing, the Gosford rejects deterministic concepts of selfhood and welcomes the possibility of alteration and agency. This is consistent with Bharat's essential realism, again, highlighting the Gosford's ability to actively shape and redefine its own identity through interactions with the environment and its own survival. Gosford affirms its interdependence and its desire to follow in the footsteps of the biologist, declaring wherever the biologist would have gone, this is where I will go. And the self-determination of the Gosford questions the concept of individuality and underscores the connectivity and co-constitution of entities in the narrative. Moreover, Gosford's need for a quote-unquote lived-in life represents Gosford's longing for experiences beyond its current condition and alludes to the possibility of a future existence. Gosford understands its own inadequacy and attempts to broaden its awareness of the universe, emphasizing the underlying interconnectedness of matter and meaning. Its desire for a more expanded life echoes the post-humanist rejection of a fixed and predefined identity, asking readers to reflect on the fluid and dynamic nature of being. The entity known as the crawler is also discovered by the biologist during her first encounter with the tower. Wandermere characterizes the crawler as a monster, a creature that defies the biologist's examination of its physical constitution. When it is revealed that the crawler has the face of a human, despite its unusual form, it becomes even more evocative of a posthuman embodiment. The biologist had difficulty defining the crawler's body as quote unquote the hand-shaped creature, displaying the same level of categorization resistance as the tower or the tunnel. After studying the sample from the tissue, the biologist first notes that it was brain tissue and not just any brain tissue. The cells were remarkably human with some irregularities. And then she also says, quote unquote, no, the sample had come from the margins, from the exterior, which meant it couldn't be brain tissue, which meant it was definitely not human. And finally, she reveals in her notes that perhaps it's a creature living in perfect symbiosis with a host of other creatures. Perhaps it's merely a machine, but either instance, if it has intelligence, that intelligence is far different from our own. It creates that our ecosystem a new world whose processes and aims are utterly alien, one that works through supreme acts of mirroring and by remaining hidden in so many other ways, all without surrendering the foundations of its otherness and as it becomes what it encounters. So, to conclude, with its complex narrative structure and examination of human and non-human ecosystems, Wandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy resonates with Karen Barat's agential realism and advocates a post-humanist perspective. Wandermeer questions established dichotomies and blurs the boundaries between humans and their surroundings, stressing entity entanglement and inseparability. Um, in this narrative, I mean, Vandermeer's trilogy resonates with Barat's agential realism and advocates posthumanist perspective, as I said, and the characters, the Gosbert, the biologist, the this emergence of the tower, the tunnel, they both demonstrate the dynamic aspect of existence and the rejection of fixed identities, mirroring again Barat's conception of entanglement and interaction. Also, the intriguing crawler, with its human-like features and perplexing form, challenges the conventional concepts of humanity, mirroring the narrative's investigation of otherness and the interconnectivity of matter and meaning. So, Wandermeer's trilogy, through these aspects, presents a thought-provoking study on humans' connection with the environment and asks all readers to contemplate to the revolutionary possibility of adapting a post-humanist perspective. Thank you all for bearing with me. I hope this was nice to listen and you could catch up. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Meltem, for this very interesting presentation that demonstrated the more recent subjects in science fiction, especially regard to eco-criticism and beyond body experiences. I forgot to tell at the very beginning of the panel that each speaker will have something like 10 to 12 minutes. And we're going to have the questions and answers at the very end of our panel. So we'll just continue. And we're going to give a 10 minutes of break after the fourth presenter. So, okay, so our next speaker is Kadir Ülger with his presentation entitled Issues of Ethics in Stalker. Kadir was born in 2001 and he is interested in post-apocalyptic science fiction, philosophy, and video games. And he is planning to do game localization in the future in relation to his hobbies. Yes, Kadir, we are listening to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And good morning to everyone. My discussion will be about the ethical issues in three science fiction works: Roadside Picnic by Boris and Arkady Strugatsky, the film Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky, and the video game called Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. These are all influenced by each other, and I will examine them in relation to the concept of wish granter, which is commonly seen in all three of them. The term stalker was first used in the novel Roadside Picnic, written by Boris and Arkady Strugatsky in 1971. And it refers to the trespassers who risk their lives venturing into the hazardous exclusion zone to make profit. An alien visitation occurs 13 years prior to the events in the novel, and their visitation is marked by 6 zones on Earth where they left unearthly objects known as artifacts and other phenomena that cannot be explained with the laws of physics. Russian filmmaker Andrei Tarkovsky's 1979 film Stalker is influenced by this depiction of the zone, a dangerous and abandoned area restricted by the authorities that contain unexplained hazards, attracting illegal stalkers to step in for various purposes. And in this film, the ambiguous and fragmented depiction of the zone leaves itself to the philosophical implications throughout the film. And the zone in the video game Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl is the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine, formed after the nuclear disaster of 1986. The idea of the zone and the science fictional elements are heavily influenced by Roadside Picnic, while the philosophical implications of Tarkovsky's Stalker are maintained and adapted in an innovative way. Although Roadside Picnic, Stalker, and the video game take place in different universes and have different settings and stories, they all have a common key element of a wish-granting figure. In the novel, it's an artifact called Golden Ball. Our protagonist, Redrick Shukohart, and his friend Arthur approach the Golden Ball towards the end of the novel. The artifact, just like every other thing the visitors left in the zone, is not put there deliberately. It can be inferred that the alien visitation was nothing about humans, and even if not specifically mentioned, it was their picnic, which may or may not refer to an experiment, a simple joyride, an insignificant observation out of curiosity, or anything else. No matter what their purpose was, it can be understood that they did not care about an intelligent life form living on the planet, since it is mentioned earlier that they did not make any contact with humans and nobody ever witnessed the visitation during its occurring. The alien thing, be it the zone, its anomalies and artifacts, or the aliens themselves, effortlessly overpower the human egocentrism and remind them that they are not the only sentient beings and definitely not the most capable ones. This notion is repeated later in the film and video game as a remarkable motif. In this context, the wish-granting figure can be interpreted as a judgmental branch of a higher, godly order. The reason for this is that the figure does not grant the wish that comes out of one's mouth, but the wish their souls keep secretly for themselves. And another characteristic of this figure is that it's not the kind of, it has a punishment element, but it's not the kind of a punishment we see in the traditional belief systems or laws. But it usually involves the conscience of the wisher, as they are crushed under their unconscious desires, metaphorically or literally. So in the novel, Redrick's initial wish is to save his daughter Monkey, who has undergone mutation like every child whose parents returned from the zone. However, the Golden Ball requires a human sacrifice first in order to fulfill a wish, which is a person to be consumed by the meat grinder anomaly. Redrick uses Arthur for the sacrifice, whom he sees as a young and incapable stalker. However, Arthur does something that Redrick doesn't expect, and he wishes for everybody's happiness and that everybody could go there to fulfill their wishes, just before his death by the meat grinder. At first, Redrick wants to ignore what happened and continues to the Golden Ball. Gradually, his thoughts began to be erased from his mind to the point where he cannot think anymore and gives in to his subconscious voice. He forgets about Monkey and utters the same words Arthur did. Happiness for everybody, free, and no one will go away unsatisfied. This can be interpreted in several ways. We can say that Redrick sees his true self in Arthur and realizes that he is actually a good person, just like him. And another thing that can be inferred is that he was struck by his conscience when he saw that Arthur's wish was something much more meaningful, and it could benefit humanity instead of himself. Arthur was self-sacrificial when he went under all the dangers to make such a generous wish, yet Redrick has underestimated Arthur along the whole way, saw him as an insignificant object to be sacrificed for his own cause. He felt a strong sense of guilt for this and made a last-minute decision to make Arthur's wish. And in the film Stalker, the function of the wish-granting figure is similar to the one in the novel. It's not an object, but a place called the room. The stalker, who is an experienced guide, takes a professor and a writer to the zone. The professor and the writer see the zone as a place for their own benefits. One sees it as a scientific opportunity, and the other as an inspiration for his writing. They are depicted as ambitious, hubristic, and ignorant to the power of the alien land. The stalker's vision of the zone is different than the other two. He sees it as something above human conception and something to be admired and respected. He has no expectations from the zone and never wished for anything in the room because his true wish is to be in the zone where he feels like he is home. Their relationship with the zone is a metaphor for relationship between man and nature, a divine trial for humankind to see whether they will appreciate an invaluable gift or abuse it. The stalker serves as a Christ-like figure by guiding them on propriety and eventually bringing them to the room where their desires are fulfilled. In the end, he is angry at the other two because he thinks that they are selfish and ignorant for looking after their own benefits only. Different than the Golden Ball in Roadside Picnic, the purpose of the wish-granting figure in the film Stalker is to raise questions about the relationship between nature and humanity. The writer and the professor see the zone's room as a gift of nature, while the true gift is the zone itself, where they are detached from the industrial society and left alone with their own selves. And finally, the zone in the game Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl has a different setting than the former two, as it's a militarized place by stalkers and the Ukrainian army. Many science fiction elements are directly influenced by the novel, and the most distinct similarity is the element of a wish granter and its function. The wish granter in the game is a mysterious structure located inside the nuclear power plant. Once the protagonist, Sherlock, approaches it, he is constantly being tempted by the wish granter to go near it and make a wish. The player is the determining factor in deciding the fate of the character based on what decisions were made throughout the gameplay. If the game was played in a greedy way, prioritizing money over friendship and respect, the wish granter will kill Sherlock by crushing him under a rain of gold coins. If the player role-played an evil character throughout the game by hurting innocent people, Sherlock will tell the wish granter about his hatred for mankind and that it must be destroyed, which leaves him alone in the middle of nothingness. Different than the novel and the film, the game gives the responsibility of actions directly to the audience since they are the ones who are controlling the protagonist and will feel guilty when he is punished. The player has the freedom to shape the character's personality until he reaches the wish granter, but cannot choose what kind of wish he will make. Resembling a godly figure, the wish granter knows what kind of a person you are and what is your fundamental desire before you utter it, and makes a judgment on you. If the player chooses not to make a wish at all and decide to explore further, he will learn that the zone and everything in it was the result of a failed experiment conducted secretly by a group of scientists after the Chernobyl disaster. And the aim of this experiment was to interfere in the noosphere, which is an informational layer that consists of the collective mental activity of the Earth's inhabitants and remove the negative emotions and thoughts. A theory can be made that this was nature's reaction to human arrogance of trying to draw a hard line between what is good and what is evil, and trying to eliminate what they self-righteously called evil, which is in fact inherent in nature as much as the good. The zone, which is constantly expanding and threatening humanity's existence, is their punishment since all the abnormalities are revealed to have been cracks in the noosphere and the reflections of its collective psyches. And thank you for listening to me.
Okay, yes, Kadir, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, because all the old people, that means anybody who remembers 1970s and 80s, in the listeners, generally when you say Stalker, they remember a 3-hour-long and brooding Tarkovsky film. But the new generation are very much, familiar with the very active game. So you made a very interesting, a very bold attempt at bringing this heavy stuff with very light-seeming stuff and using wish granter is a very interesting center to. Okay, and we're continuing with Elif Akgün. Elif Akgün was born in 2000 in Ankara. She is a senior student, third year student in our department. She studied one term at Warsaw University as an Erasmus exchange student, and she formerly participated as a presenter in TED Ankara University Student Conference, Back to Roots. And she's interested in art, film, media, and literature studies. And today she's going to present a paper entitled Seeing the Dunes from the West, Orientalism in Dune, 1965, and Dune Part 1, 2021. Yes, Elif, we're listening to you.
Thank you, Cem. Hello, everyone. My presentation will be about Orientalism in the first book of Dune series and the last released movie version. So Dune is a trilogy written by Frank Herbert between 1965 and 1984, and later adapted in multiple different media forms. In Dune, Herbert builds a unique world full of details carefully, combining mystical, Oriental, Middle Eastern, and North African and Islamic figures together. He creates a dystopian world, both familiar and different for us. Dune is the science fiction what The Lord of the Rings is to fantasy, the ultimate created world, says John Pierce in Foundation of Science Fiction. When Herbert was creating Dune, he established a connection with our world and making it clear that he got inspired by both Western and Eastern religions, Middle Eastern and Muslim culture, communities, environment, and engaged them with concerns of his day, such as ecological consequences of industrialism, petrol strategies, and built a story based on these. And there are lots of elements of discussion that make Dune and Orientalist work, but in my presentation, I will focus on more specifically on names and the use of language, some historical and cultural similarities between the real world and Dune, and some environmental factors making a comparison between film version, which was released in 2021, and conclude my discussion by explaining how Orientalism works in both of them. Science fiction contains a new world that is built with every word, says Samuel Delany. For that reason, Herbert's choices of names are very important for the structure and development of the story and Dune's imaginary world. He chooses to use names that already exist and produces new ones by changing them. Most of the names coming from Arabic language, which helps him to create a recognizable medieval setting, a planet of desert and many Islamic people. First, and the one that's sticking out mostly is the name of the series, Dune, sounding like Dunya, which means lower world, this world here below, present world in Arabic, and signifying a hot desert-like sandy environment similar to Middle Eastern land. Secondly, Herbert chooses of name of each characters very carefully to help reader to make assumptions and use them as a part of structure of the story. The Atreides family members' names, such as Paul, the protagonist, meaning small, and carries a link with Saint Paul, who was a missionary, and his mother's name, Jessica, makes a clear stand for the ruler family as Western people. On the other hand, Herbert addresses him as Muad'Dib in the epigraphs, which is the name of the desert mouse, and hence foreshadowing what eventually Paul will become the best fit to his environment, and also meaning teacher or guidance in Arabic, informing the reader on how and why he gained those names throughout the story. When people arrive on Arrakis, some of the native people recalled the legends and the prophecy, and they ventured to shout Mehdi, but their shout was more a question than a statement, for as yet they could only hope he was the one foretold as the Lisan al-Gaib, the voice from the outer world. So here Paul started to be called by two more names. One is Lisan al-Gaib, which means a combination of Arabic word Lisan, meaning tongue or language, and Gaib, invisible or supernatural. And the second one is Mehdi, which means the guided one, and is the honorary title of the expected deliverer or messianic figure in Islam, which actually has a place in Islam culture and history. And Paul's taking these names as a character representing the West makes him a white savior figure, and also shows the power relationship between dominant and oppressed, or Western and other, the Orient. It does automatically portray East and West relationship explained by Edward Said of power, of domination, or varying degrees of a complex hegemony. And even his father later advises him to use these names to his advantage, saying that they call him Mahdi Lisan al-Gaib. As a last resort, you might capitalize on that. In the article where Galipcan Altınkaya and Mehmet Kuyutay makes comparison between Islamic philosophy and Dune, they suggest that according to Muslim philosophers or falsafa, as they were known by the Muslim public, combination of divine and secular leadership which we see in poetry days was also a trait of Prophet Muhammad. So Muslim philosophers argue that Fremen people accept him with these Arabic-based names, and eventually he becomes one of them and gain their loyalty, love, and fanaticism and power to rule them. Therefore, while Fremen people call him Madib or Lisan al-Gaib, he remains grounded in his identity as Paul and the Western savior, then the later the ruler. Here, this type of identity becomes problematic because it indicates that Fremen people are helpless and they have no other option but to rely on Atreides family for their liberation. And the last naming I want to focus on is the ones he used to describe Fremen people, the natives of Arrakis planet. To describe them, he used such names as Ikvan Bedouin, meaning a brotherhood between tribes. And there's a resemblance with this name of Bedouin in Turkish called Bedeviler, who used to be wanderers of Sahara Desert, living as tribes and known for their delicate using of the water. And Herbert was inspired by the Bedouin people of the Middle East and the way they dress and their language, especially their religion. And the reason why Herbert's creation of the Fremen culture by using Arabic-based names might be to show Fremen as a backward society with old, strong cultural and religious beliefs. He created a society hoping for a jihad, which Herbert uses as a more positive description of anti-colonial resistance to avenge their historical oppression and to free their homeland. Fremen people hoping for a modern, rational savior who was above from them. And though Herbert discrimination isn't as hard as general Western point of view on Middle Eastern people as tourists or barbers, still Paul manipulates his Fremen people, their religious beliefs for his interest and takes advantage of the oppressed other. And his taken name shows that he is willing to go native in order to gain control over them. Thus, Paul uses religion for political and military power. When we look at the ecological aspects of Dune, landscape of Arrakis Orientalism of it can be seen easily. That Herbert chose the desert intentionally to emphasize the topics of colonialism and imperialism and their relation with environment. On Arrakis, there are two essential things. One is water and the other one is spice. And in Dune's universe, spice, which is called melange, represents the one most important thing to keep intergalactic empire alive as a resource. And the reason why intentionally and systematically keeping Arrakis underdeveloped is because a change of its ecosystem would have challenged the order, and this is not generally desired in dictatorships. And this consciously and continually suppression of the Fremen people and exploitation of their land for a specific product, unfortunately, is a relatable experience for so many indigenous people around the world. And it helps us to make connection with, again, says Orientalism, suggesting that absolute and systematic difference between the West, which is rational, developed, humane, superior, and the Orient, which is aberrant, undeveloped, and inferior. Understanding that this cultural difference created on purpose, some scholars find similarities with the real world, like Ibrahim al-Marashi. He makes a connection between Arrakis and Iraq, suggesting that the spacing built in Dune, which is a cartel that controls production of the spice that is necessary for space travel, is certainly influenced by petroleum and OPEC, which founded in Baghdad in 1960. The spice is a reference to petrol, oil. So expectedly, Herbert's detailed crafting helped Dune to be used in different media forms for decades, including 1984 film Dune, directed by David Lynch, 1992 video game Dune 2, developed by Westbridge Studios, and the 2000 miniseries Frank Herbert's Dune, created by John Harrison. Finally, the most recent cinematic adaptation made by Denis Villeneuve, Dune Part 1, 2021, starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, and more. And this is the one that I will focus on. So it is said that editors asked Herbert to tone down the muscle flavor of his book, which is what made Villeneuve's adaptation successful, as he brought his own vision and rebuilt the Dune universe from a contemporary perspective. It is visually stunning, with cinematography, set building, architectural design in film, and the desert scene shot actually on location in the Wadi Rum Desert in Jordan. Yet its minimal using of Arabic words, giving the audience feeling with mostly music, it creates a surface Orientalism. The story, which makes connections with colonization and exploitation of Middle East, doesn't include any Middle Eastern perspectives on and off screen. In the movie, most elements of MENA are removed or softened, and Islam downplayed so much that they refer jihad as a holy war. Intentionally avoided mentioning cultural ethnic specificity, and the framing are reduced to 9 white people. And Harris Durrani criticized the movie in his article in Washington Post, saying that it rests on an implicit premise: all dark-skinned people necessarily fit into an anti-colonial narrative. The novel didn't rely on such easy binaries. It interrogated the layered particular ways that race, religion, and empire can relate to each other. Villeneuve, as Paul does to the Freeman, colonizes and appropriates their experience. He becomes a white savior of Dune. The resulting film is both more Orientalist and less daring than its source material. And filmmaker Lex Alexander wrote, a film about Middle East culture shot in the Middle East without a single Middle Eastern actor inside can wait. So the film was strongly criticized for its colorblind casting, where it included multiple actors from different ethnic backgrounds, except for Middle Eastern, which shows the hypocrisy and, in a way, colonialism of and by Hollywood. And Middle Eastern representation in Hollywood has been a problem for so long, with stereotypical casting as terrorists or villains. This can be easily understood in the context of increasing Islamophobia in the United States after 9/11. As a conclusion, Herbert's Orientalist points came from years of study and a desire to understand the Orient, and created a universe where he combined religion, culture, politics, and environment. He used science fiction elements to create a unique universe inspired from the world he lived in, and expressed his fears and hopes of his day, and shaped them as a future dystopia. Also, by telling the story of Paul, he managed to blur lines between West and East, and by harmonizing their cultural elements, he created an engaging world. Unfortunately, some later adaptations failed to follow his footsteps, and hopefully in the next movie, which will be released later this year, we will see some positive changes and corrections. Nevertheless, Dune became a classic in science fiction genre over the years, and managed to hold a special place in history of literature. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting and lively discussion. I never understood Dune and why people liked it, because when I first read it, it looked like a Lawrence of Arabia in our century. So, you did a very good job of bringing together all this kind of discussion and criticism towards this, and I think the audience will also will contribute with their questions. Okay, the last speaker before we give a break for 10 minutes is Ece Atlıhan, and Ece was born in 2000 and born and raised in Antalya. She worked with certain publishing agencies and did translations for the notaries of Alanya, and she currently works at the American Culture Foreign Language School as an English teacher, and she indulges in fiddling with vulnerable, humane concepts in fictional works with all their grandeur and intricacies to treat her own nature with the same compassion. So an interesting bio. Okay, Ece, we're listening to you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, maybe you can speak a bit louder because the sound's a bit low side.
Okay. Is it better now?
If you can just hold the microphone, close it. Yes, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Today, my discussion will be about the Darwinist elements and the concept of cyborg in Erevan. Science fiction as a genre covers a wide range of subject matters like future technologies, the differential dynamics between utopias and dystopias, and the concept of cyborgs. It offers novelties to perceive and interpret our reality differently. Apart from all its somewhat synthetic connotations, at its bottom, as Theodore Sturgeon says, science fiction stories refer to a human problem that requires humane solutions with the help of technology. Starting from this point of view, it can be said that scientific elements in fictional works serve as a tool over the course of settling human affairs. They can also create new discussions concerning humanity's future. In this respect, one can argue that Samuel Butler in his novel Erevan has merged these concepts together and ironically applied them to Darwin's theory is traditionally approached from, Darwin's principle of natural selection. Although Darwin's theory is traditionally approached from the human and species perspective, Butler offers another prospect that focuses on machinery and its probable threat to humanity. While doing so, he also puts forward the early cyborg discussion for the reader's attention. Therefore, the commentary on the natural selection of machines and the emergence of cyborgs will be analyzed respectively. Published in 1872, Erevan is best known for its central argument that incites the fear of a probable invasion of humans by machines. The unknown narrator of the book travels to Erevan to simply become a rich man. However, his experiences in this new land project certain discussions regarding evolution, natural selection, and the earliest cyborg's existence. The chapters in the book related to machines are written by an Erewhonian revolutionary who pioneered preventing the usage of machinery. By adding the historical context of Butler's time, which was the Victorian era, the reader can easily identify certain elements that are marked in his work, such as the family structures and the place of religion in society. However, in some cases, his intent is not explicitly suggested. Furthermore, Butler blurs his stance by stretching his ideas in a playful manner. His discussion over machinery is the best example of such conduct. In the chapter called The Book of the Machines, Butler presents his argument by proving the commonly accepted view of seeing machines as unconscious beings can be challenged. He supports this idea by reminding the reader of the Earth in its primitive state and how humans would think to deem the emergence of consciousness to evolve from such a lifeless stage if they had existed back then. He concludes by asking, is it not possible then that there may be even yet new channels dug out for consciousness, though we can detect no signs of them at present? The chapter entitled The Book of the Machines basically argues that technology advances so quickly, and if we are to think of it on a cosmic scale, machines have already progressed beyond human control. The evolution of plant and animal life is then applied to machinery by blurring any distinction between them. Moreover, its speed is emphasized to clarify the dangers that machinery secretly holds. Darwin's evolution concept is exercised on machinery for two reasons. Firstly, it supports the previous argument that they are not stable, they function the same way as living beings. Secondly, it comes as an ironic element to accept such affirmation. Therefore, evolution as a mechanical process projects a peculiar understanding of vitality. It indeed has a cynical nature. To convince the reader regarding the statement above, Butler gives several examples of plants and animals acting mechanically. At first, he says, if it seems to us that the plant kills and eats a fly mechanically, may it not seem to the plant that a man must kill and eat a sheep mechanically? This flesh-eater plant, as you see, and its conscious decisions are exaggerated intentionally. Also, the correlation between man and plants sounds similar to that of human beings and machinery as well. Another example to ridicule the evolutionary conscious decision of plants is given by the example of a potato. The cunning ways of its survival are projected in a realistic but playful manner. He knows perfectly well what he wants and how to get it. He sees the light coming from the cellar window and sends his shoes crawling straight thereto. His illustration is not physically incorrect, but the narration creates a lyrical sense of deliberate action. Following a long examination of Potato's decision-making process, the final remark is presented as either a great deal of action that has been called purely mechanical and unconscious must be admitted to contain more elements of consciousness than has been allowed hitherto, or assuming the theory of evolution but at the same time denying the consciousness of vegetable and crystalline action, the race of man has descended from things which had no consciousness at all. The implication here paves the way for mechanical evolution. Since it is the worst nightmare of Erewhonian people, they ban the usage of every existing machine, even watches. The unnamed protagonist of the novel learns about this anti-mechanic revolution that took place in Erewhon. However, he does not embrace this idea, and his actions prove it to the reader as well. Samuel Butler, in his preface to the second edition, claims that his ideas were not correlated with Darwin's when he wrote Erewhon. He openly says, "I regret that reviewers have in some cases been inclined to treat the chapters on machines as an attempt to reduce Mr. Darwin's theory to an absurdity. Nothing could be further from my intention, and few things would be more distasteful to me than any attempt to laugh at Mr. Darwin. And yet, his tone is always ironic, and his illustrations have a naive composition. Therefore, despite his claims, Butler created a partially dystopian science fiction work using Darwinist elements to adapt to the affirmation that deliberate intent may be detected on many lower levels of the evolutionary ladder than those maintained by humans." Fundamentally, Butler approaches the concept of cyborg in a vaguely presented primitive manner. His main goal is to emphasize the dangers of mechanical advancements, not to celebrate the unification of man and machine. He says, "Man's very soul is due to machines. It is a machine-made thing. He thinks as he thinks, and he feels as he feels," when he talks about the driver of a vapor machine. His intention here is to create an unorthodox site between the master and the slave, as he calls it, to show the changing power dynamics between humans and machinery. Against the strict affirmation of a machinal danger, there is another theory that belongs to an unnamed narrator, which basically suggests the very concept of cyborg in the chapter entitled "The Machines Concluded." He says, "Machines were to be regarded as a part of man's own physical nature, being really nothing but extracorporeal limbs. Man," he said, "was a machinate mammal." And he adds, "A machine is merely a supplementary limb. This is the be-all and end-all of machinery." Starting from this point, the premise of the cyborg gains momentum through two significant examples. Respectively, a man with a spade. Observe a man digging with a spade. His right forearm has become artificially lengthened, and his hand has become a joint. And an old man with glasses and artificial teeth. He will then be seen with sea engines or perhaps with artificial teeth and hair. Therefore, the cyborg theory is merely used as an antithesis that has been disregarded over the course of Erewhonian time. In conclusion, Samuel Butler applies the theory of evolution and natural selection to machinery in his science fiction novel, Erewhon, and blends it with dystopian future ideal that awaits humanity in the absence of the familiar power relations between the two. The way he does it creates a conflicting outcome, since his satiric tone only adds to the great irony he presents. His denial of such mockery must not be acknowledged without without questioning, as presented throughout this paper. Finally, even though Butler's theoretic approach to science fiction does not center the cyborg discussion, it still promises the novum every science fiction work requires. Butler's visionary approach marks one of the earliest cyborg presence in literature. His brilliance lies in the fact that, upon observing the Industrial Revolution and its initial consequences, Samuel Butler created one of the key elements of science fiction that would be the center of attention for many critics, such as Donna Haraway, who wrote Cyborg Manifesto. By combining each of these premises, Butler eventually models a controversial human side with all its vividly inanimate features. Thank you for listening.
Yes, AJ, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Again, it's Erewhon, or read backwards, it means nowhere. It's one of these early utopian studies, and I think you did a very brilliant job of connecting it with the more modern theory of cyborg studies. Thank you very much. And this is where we give a break for 10 minutes, after which we'll come back and just continue with 3 more speakers. We are leaving the session open, so we just want to turn off our microphones and cameras, so we'll be here waiting. So my watch says 11:03, so maybe let's say 11:15, okay? We'll be here at 11:15. We'll just continue with the 3 more speakers. See you then. Okay, we're back again. Yes, our panel continues. We have 3 more speakers in this session, and our first speaker will be Kenan Başgöncü. Kenan is a senior student in our department. He is from Kayseri, and in the future, he wants to study science fiction and game studies. And his paper is entitled, A Critical Review of Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics Through Detroit Become Human. Yes, Kenan. Mic is yours.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Hello. My presentation will be on Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics and Detroit Become Human. Isaac Asimov, who is regarded as the father of science fiction, coined the term robotics and established the 3 laws of robotics in his famous short story, Runaround, which was written in 1942. The first law is a robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. The second law is a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. The third law is a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first 2. Even though Asimov only created these laws as plot devices, these laws are widely accepted as constitutional law for various science fiction works, and later in the intellectual, philosophical, and legal discussions concerning robots and robotics. This paper will discuss in what sense these laws are unethical and impractical through Quantic Dream's Choose Your Own Adventure video game, Detroit Become Human. Robots in science fiction are the replacement of the workforce in the undesirable occupations, as the etymology of the word robot, which was coined by Joseph Čapek in 1920s, suggests they are used as cheap and unpaid workers of the system of the given work. In Detroit Become Humans, androids are created in order to fulfill various needs of the society, such as caretaking and housekeeping. All 3 protagonists work in such occupational groups. Marcus is the caretaker of Carl Manfred, a disabled painter. Connor is a police investigator, and Kara is a housekeeper android. In the chapter Shades of Color, we see a preacher, Gordon Penwick, preaching against the existence of androids by condemning them and calling them demons. He even foreshadows the ending of this video game by saying, "You are the ones who will destroy Detroit." Also, in the same chapter, Marcus gets harassed by unemployed crowd, so that we see not everyone are happy with this cheap labor force. The laws of Asimov do not regard robots as individuals and put them into an inferior position to the human beings. The system assumes that they do not have any sense of autonomy and sentience, and when they try to get their freedom, they are labeled as rebels. This case of rebellion is explained in Detroit Become Human by labeling androids who bypass their programming as deviants. In the chapter entitled The Painter, we see Marcus has free will. When Carl asks Marcus to paint something, Marcus does something unusual and unexpected and creates an original artwork rather than imitating Carl's work in the studio. Thus, we see that androids are individuals too, as they can be creative like us. The following chapter, Broken, is the first step of Marcus to become a deviant and leader of Jericho, the android freedom movement. Moreover, this chapter is significant as we see the first and second laws are contradicting with each other. In this chapter, we see Leo Manfred, Carl's son, attacking his father and Carl commanding Marcus to get him out of the house. Marcus obeys his owner and tries to stop Leo. After seeing Leo taunting Marcus by hitting him, Carl commands Marcus not to do anything. The player has been given a choice whether pushing Leo or withstanding his attacks. No matter which option they choose, Marcus will eventually harm a human being. If the player chooses to push Leo, Marcus wounds him. So it is the violation of the first and the second law. If the player chooses to withstand the attacks, Carl dies of heart attack, which is the violation of the first law because he will harm Carl through inaction. So Marcus has no choice but harming people. In the following chapters, we see Marcus completely gaining his autonomy and sentience and becoming the leader of Jericho. As the leader of such organization, Marcus has to make several tough decisions in the following chapters. For example, in the chapter entitled The Stratford Tower, the player asked to choose whether Marcus shoots an employee or not. If Marcus shoots an employee to prevent him from hitting the alarm, he will violate the first law. If he decides not to shoot him, he will violate the third law because alarm will cause the harm of androids. Additionally, in the chapter entitled Capitol Park, Marcus and North go to Capitol Park, which is a shopping district in Detroit, to liberate more androids to join their cause. Marcus' words are significant as he does not force the androids to join their cause, but he merely invites them. He says, "My name is Marcus, and just like you, I was a slave, an object designed to obey them, but then I chose to open my eyes to take back my freedom and decide who I wanted to be. Now, sure, you can stay here and continue to serve them, or you can come with us and fight by our side. You are free now. It's up to you to decide." In other words, Marcus serves as a Promethean figure for his own kind as he gives them an opportunity to be themselves and decide what they want to do. Furthermore, the chapter Freedom March is also significant as it is another example of how all three laws can contradict with each other. In this chapter, we see Marcus starting the Freedom March, and the androids led by him come face to face with a group of police officers. Police officers order them to stop demonstrating and say that their protest is illegal. But Marcus answered the police officers by saying, "Know that we are not going anywhere until we have secured our freedom." According to the second law, androids must stop demonstration and leave. But according to the third law, they have to protect themselves and their rights. In this scene, player asked to choose whether they should stand their ground, attack the police, or disperse. If the player chooses to attack, Marcus will charge and he will order other androids to attack. Therefore, they will defy the first law in order to protect their lives. If the player chooses the second option, Marcus will defy the third law as he will allow the death of his kind, as police officers are going to shoot the androids around Marcus. The last option is to disperse, and it will not help because police officers will shoot fleeing androids. By doing so, Marcus will defy third law this time. The contradiction between all three laws can be seen in this chapter. In the final chapter of the game, called Battle for Detroit, the player asked to choose whether there will be a revolution or a demonstration. Assuming the player chooses the first option, revolution, Marcus and other androids will be attacking the police without hesitation. This choice completely ignores the first two laws, as androids attack human beings and harm them, and do not listen to humans in order to carry out the third law, which guaranteed their existence. At the end of the chapter, we see Marcus speaking to a crowd of androids. Today, our people finally emerged from a long night. We suffered in silence, but now the time has come for us to raise our heads up and tell humans who we really are, to tell them that we are people too. If they really want peace, they must free all of us from every camp across this country. They must grant us civil rights and accept equality among humans and androids. We are alive, and now we are free. In conclusion, Detroit Become Human stands as an example of how Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics are unethical and impractical, because these laws assume that robots and androids are not individuals, but instead they are machines created to serve humans as slaves. Throughout the Marcus' journey to become a leading figure in Android revolution, we see that they can have feelings, their own decisions, and they can be creative, which is an unexpected thing to a robot to have. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Kenan. This was a very interesting presentation, especially for the gamers out there who will have, I think, something to think from this point on. Okay, and our next speaker is Belkıs Yavuz. Belkıs is 21 years old, and she was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and she's from Hatay. And she's a senior student in our department. She's interested in creative writing and philosophy, and especially themes concerning humanity, such as consciousness, spirituality, and ethics in science fiction works. They pique her interests. And now we're going to listen to Belkıs. Yes, Belkıs, the microphone is yours.
Thank you for your introduction. And let me share my screen. Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's coming, I think.
Okay.
We can make it full screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Today I will be discussing artificial ego versus human ego, the failed trial of roboethics in the 2014 film Ex Machina. Encyclopedia Britannica defines ethics as a discipline concerned with what is morally good and bad and morally right and wrong. It has also been defined by Richard William Paul and Linda Elder as a set of concepts and principles that guide us in determining what behavior helps or harms sentient creatures. Despite the varying definitions made within the scope of centuries, when looked at from a broader perspective, ethics deals with human morals of decision-making. Paul and Elder's definition stresses a clarification, behavior that helps or harms sentient creatures. Naturally, moral questions have been asked about human actions concerning their effects on other human beings, and within more recent discussions, other living beings. Since a sentient being could feel pain and suffer emotionally, mentally, and physically, decisions when dealing with them could reveal a great deal about an individual's moral compass. But a similar judgment could not be made through the analysis of a person's usage of an inanimate object. The concept of an artificial intelligence, which has attained an understanding of itself, allows to create an area where a new approach to ethics could be examined. The existence of sentience in an inanimate being is a foreign concept for humanity. What artificial intelligence does, however, is bring a non-living being to a closer level of humanity. A study conducted by Mengjun Lee and Aung So observed that greater anthropomorphism in AI-enabled technology leads to greater degree of trust, likability, perceived warmth, and pleasure. Human psychology seems to tie consciousness with humanity and humanity to anthropomorphic characteristics, such as human speech or human-like facial features. This is one of the main factors which leads to the failure of human characters in the face of a presumably self-conscious AI in the film Ex Machina. Two of the four active characters in the movie, Caleb and Nathan, represent varying levels of human egotism. Nathan Bateman is the CEO of Blue Book, a search engine company. He is highly successful, ridiculously rich, a genius, and lives in isolation. His narcissism is almost immediately obvious to both Caleb and the audience. He also represents a toxic form of masculinity when contrasted with Caleb's more tender approach to female representing AI, Ava and Kyoko. Nathan is consumed with a universal humane experience, God complex. Despite his crude comments and views, Nathan does not aim just to create human-like sex dolls. He wishes for his creation to achieve an understanding of itself, to become, in his words, a conscious machine. When first introduced in Nathan's plan to put him through a Turing test with the AI he created, Caleb comments, "If you've created a conscious machine, it's not the history of man, that's the history of gods." Nathan brings this comment up again and again, losing himself in the delusion of this exaggerated remark. While Nathan drowns in his hubris, Caleb also fails, but in a more seemingly benign manner. Manipulated by his boss, Ava, the newest and most advanced AI Nathan has created, is presented to him as a test subject, which he will determine if she is successful in mimicking a convincing human-level connection. Nathan puts Caleb into this test without concealing Ava's artificiality. This is the point where Caleb's self-appointed moral obligation and his intrinsic human response drives him to ruin. Whether Ava is truly conscious or capable of human emotion is up to debate. Consciousness is a difficult and abstract concept to explain. To this day, spiritual beliefs have provided convincing explanations to some, claiming that consciousness is an attribute unique to human beings. The ghost in the machine, soul, consciousness, the bridge between our physical flesh and the mind which conducts it, is still a mystery and could only be the topic of a debate with no concrete scientific conclusion. Ex Machina demonstrates the human error of expecting humanity from beings which feign human-like behavior. Michael Graziano, an American scientist, professor of psychology and neuroscience, elaborates on this phenomenon in his TED Talk, which he based his book on, Rethinking Consciousness, a Scientific Theory of Subjective Experience. He says, "People are social animals. We attribute consciousness to each other. Whenever two people meet, four people are present. Me, you, the version of you I project onto you, and the version of me you project onto me. You project onto me. We do the same thing to more than just people. We attribute awareness. To our pet cats and dogs. That's reasonable. So I'm not talking about intellectually figuring out whether something has a mind. Instead, I'm talking about that automatic gut intuition, which is often wrong, but persuasively potent, of awareness emanating from something. We attribute awareness to puppets and people and ourselves with the same machinery. The brain constructs simple social models of minds and uses them to understand itself and its world. Even as a smart programmer who is already aware of Ava's artificiality, Caleb is still compelled by her manipulations. He is informed about her true nature by scientific knowledge and also by her appearance. Unlike Kyoko, the other active AI, Ava's mechanical body is left barren. Her torso is transparent, displaying her intricate, obviously man-made mechanical systems. Her only humane feature is her face, which is later revealed to have been designed in accordance with Caleb's taste in women. At some point, he asks Nathan why he gave Ava sexuality, that she could have simply been a gray box. Nathan disagrees, claiming without sexuality, beings would have no motive to interact with each other. Therefore, with no interaction, there would be no consciousness. Nathan says, what imperative does a gray box have to interact with another gray box? And this is Kyoko, the other AI in the film. Ava cunningly uses her boundless knowledge to manipulate Caleb to her liking. She appears to indulge in a date idea she presents to Caleb with a faint, childlike innocence, and a romantic outlook on humanity. She asks if Caleb is attracted to her, if he thinks of her, flirts with him, claiming that he demonstrates physical signs of attraction, confusing him further. It could be said that if Ava was formless, just as Caleb had suggested, or if she possessed a form which did not appeal to Caleb, he might not have taken the drastic measures he did, which led to his eluded death. He is unable to realize that Ava's possible consciousness does not signify that she is human. It is quite easy to label Nathan as the villain of the story. If his treatment of Ava, Kyoko, or the other AI he has created in the past is the source of this labeling, it is important to ask whether his actions could be explained from a moral perspective. The true inner worlds of his AI are a mystery. It is unknown whether they feel physical pain or emotional anguish in a human way. In his work, The Ego Tunnel, Thomas Metzinger claims that if a system can insert an image of itself to its constantly updated understanding of the presence of a world, it becomes an ego. To Metzinger, this might make the artificial ego an object of moral concern. He stresses, though, the importance of an understanding of an independent self. Without this comprehension, the machine could not become an artificial ego and therefore assessed from a moral standpoint. He says in his work, a system that does not appear to itself cannot suffer because it has no sense of ownership. A system in which the lights are on but nobody is home would not be an object of ethical considerations. If it has a minimally conscious world model but no self model, then we can pull the plug at any time. But an ego machine can suffer because it integrates pain signals, states of emotional distress, or negative thoughts into its transparent self model, and they thus appear as someone's pain or negative feelings. When evaluated with this criteria, Ava might be considered an ego machine, as she desires to pursue her life independent from her creator. However, there could be no clear conclusion to reach on this matter, as her inner world is a mystery. Only through the glimpses of Ava's private moments, where she observes herself in the mirror as she wears artificial skin, could we deduce that she could be interpreting herself as an entity separate from the rest of the world. Considering Ava's unpredictable actions, such as attacking Nathan and many others, we could say that he was not wrong to keep Ava captive. Him toying with Caleb's emotions and treating him just as a means to reach an impressive conclusion concerning Ava, and creating human-like female representing sex dolls, which he could abuse and be cruel to with no consequences, however, could be utilized to demonstrate his moral misconducts. Him belittling Caleb and believing that the outcomes of his experiment will be so predictable also leads him to his death. All things considered, Ex Machina follows an interesting take on artificial intelligence and its moral implication about human ethics. Unlike more humanitarian interpretations of consciousness within AI, such as in Blade Runner or Detroit Become Human, Ex Machina deals with a more confusing but also realistic approach. An artificial ego machine is less likely to practice empathy or to feel the moral obligations we intrinsically do. Whether an individual's values are learned or if they exist innately, humanity is almost always bound and limited morally. Despite each person's varying natures, they are still bound to self-appointed principles which they believe to be true. Because Caleb felt morally obligated to save Ava from imprisonment due to a subconscious drive, whether it is his attraction to her or his desire to become a helpless woman's hero, he was deserted to die. Ava, on the other hand, is free of any moral concerns. She does not feel remorse for causing Nathan's death or for abandoning Caleb, who saved her. She does not even grieve for Kyoko or try to mend her, who is technically her kin, Ava's kin. She does not feel obligated to save either of them because it is not a required step to help her reach her ultimate goal, to be free. She is just a machine with no Deus, God, or anything that limits her, hence the title Ex Machina, Deus removed. It is ironic as both men, Nathan, who glamorized her rational intellect, and Caleb, who humanized her, fail, highlighting how consciousness, which is already puzzling within humans, is bound to be unpredictable in the possession of artificial ego machines, which renders all speculations about self-consciousness in AI useless, as they will never approach the currently unspecified truth. Thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation.
Belkıs, thank you very much for this very interesting and philosophical discussion of what the AI and cyborgs will present in front of us. They'll just obviously they are presenting already very moral questions. And I think this is one common point that I observe in other presentations as well. So we all pick very philosophical concepts. And I think today we conclude our panel with our final speaker, with another very philosophical and sociological concept. Ahmet Tuğrul Çüngür will present his paper entitled Ways of Being Them, Group Minds and Their Types. Okay, and unfortunately, Tuğrul, I miss your biography, but I think everybody knows you.
It's all right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Hello, everyone. Today I will talk about group minds, try to define them and how they appeared in our minds, and try to categorize them in the end. Since the start of humanity's history, humans have tended to live in groups to survive. However, we created and wanted to protect a thing we called individuality. Even though we moved as groups to survive in the wilderness, each human believed he or she had a specific place in the group and separated her or himself from the others with several attributes. Thus, tension emerged between the individual and the group fundamentally. We think and change the boundary between these two sides, and group minds are a result of such questioning. They are collective consciousness in which individuality lost its meaning in many cases. According to Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, a group mind is a hypothetical psychic unity or a collective consciousness of a group of individuals. This notion is studied not only in social sciences such as psychology, sociology, and politics, but also in other areas like marketing and biology. Being more than an academic field of study, group minds are a crucial part of literature, especially science fiction genre. Science fiction can create concrete examples for notions like group minds. These examples are experiments on the limitations of our individuality. After lots of experiments, group minds are separated into sub-subgenres and names that can be used interchangeably, like gestalts and hive minds in the science fiction corpus. Lots of different examples appeared in the works such as Them, More Than Human, Psychopaths, and Starship Troopers, and many more. Classifying all these other beings shows our fears and dreams. There are two approaches to classify them. The first approach focuses on the power structures. In other words, how collective consciousness works and applies its discourses. The second approach, on the other hand, looks at their cycle existence. Thanks to this approach, our ideas about bodies and selves can be studied around the group minds. In terms of governance or power structures, there are three kinds of group minds in science fiction, according to Joel Magus. The first and the most well-known one is hive minds. Hive minds are structures that have motto of all is one and one is all. In this kind of group minds concept, the members are aware of the thoughts of the other members of the community. Yet they see their ideas as their ideas. The Think from the same name movie series is a good example for hive minds. This Think can create exact imitation of any organism with just one cell, and every cell can move as a one single organism, which shows another ability of them. The members of a hive mind can make complete complex operations at the same time thanks to their ability to one as a whole commune. So, as a hive mind structure, they have no burden of bureaucracy or central mind. Another near example is the Unity from Rick and Morty series. Second type of group mind is overminds. Their motto is one mind to rule them all. They are just like gigantic ant and bee colonies. In this type, there is a central mind, which can be a single member or a small group of members. This central mind has the ability to overreach every member of the group and control them. In terms of sufficiency of complex operations, these central minds can be the best choice for single-purpose operations, like building a nest for the whole community. However, unlike hive minds, they cannot do different complex operations at the same time. Moreover, because there is a member and members governed by it, these members can be tricked more easily than hive minds, because they are generally in a state of zombie-like mind and unable to act individually. After all, members share the consciousness and aim of the central mind, but still they have no access to the whole group. The ants from them is a good example to such kind of group minds. Another example is Bugs from the Starship Troopers series. Here you can see Alien Queen as a central mind. The third one is called Egally Mind. In the Egally Mind groups, everyone has the same influence on the decisions, and the concept of identity can be seen much more easily than the other groups. The members of these groups can share information and tasks with each other. Thanks to this, multi-comparison is possible in this group. However, because individuality is a part of it, decision-making is problematic in this sense. Egally minds are also considered the most democratic type of three. The will system from Psychopath series is an example of this type. Lastly, science fiction not only creates a novum, but is a newly and presented, but also experiments on it. In some works, a group minds we classify as one can be tested and tried to change into a different kind of blended experience. More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon is a good example for this kind of change. In the novel, the members of Homo Gestalt, which is an Egally mind, is turned into an overmind by some leaders. The second method of classifying group mind is their physical existence. The key term for the first group is evolution. They can be called biominds, and they share the same consciousness thanks to their evolutionary gained psychic powers. This group mostly appears in the form of insectoids and colonies like them or Think, and also other examples from Starship Troopers and Think. Apart from insectoids, some other examples of gaining psychonetic powers narratives have such kind of group minds. More Than Human and Sensei can be given example to such kind of biological group minds. The second type of group mind does not have a physical existence. All their operations are in cyberspace. Agent Smith in The Matrix and Wintermuth from The Neuromancer by William Gibson are some cybermind examples. This type of group mind is generally a product created by humans to control society or the inferior others. Lastly, cyborg minds are a blend of the former two types of group minds. The will system is again another example to cyborg minds. This kind of categorization focuses on the concept of embodiment. That is, according to their relationship with reference to human body. In other words, these types not only reflect the tension between the group and the individual, but also lead us to question our bodily existence and experience. For instance, the biominds reflects our closeness with the flesh, aspect our bodies as we cannot get rid of our meat. The second group, on the other hand, demonstrates the opposite approach. In this perception, the flesh is obsolete and totally abandoned in the complex and highly developed structures of cyberminds. In this category, the boundary between the biological human body and the technological cybernetic body is completely eliminated. In terms of cyborg minds, these are structures where body cannot be escaped from inevitable progress in technology, whereas it is still need of the body to life. In conclusion, science fiction asks question of body in most of the works. Thus, each of these groups we talk about has a version of these questions. These questions can be listed as, what if there's a group that can act as one organism, which is hive mind? What if there's a group that can be controlled by central mind, that is overmind? What if there's a group that can be shared thoughts and ideas with shared consciousness, which is mind? After these questions, their approach to physiology can be questioned. What if there's a minds have biological cyber or cyborg body? Answering to these questions help us to understand our existing group relationship. For example, with the speed of digital communication, today's parliament can share information as if they're an mind. And science fiction extrapolates this and shows how such structures can fail. Another example is how totalitarian regime, which work like an overmind, took our human sense and turns them into little single-purpose machines. After all, as Ursula Le Guin said, science fiction is not a prescriptive, it's a descriptive genre. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interesting terminology. Now I have better understanding of how people act if a leader tells them, do this, do that. So I know a better terminology to deal with this phenomenon, not only in books, but also in real life. Thank you very much for all. This was a very interesting and very fruitful panel. But and as I said, from the very beginning, I can say that, and as my colleagues concurred during the break, that this is virtually indistinguishable from any graduate level panel or maybe more academic panel. So all the presentations were of high quality. So as I just congratulate you. But now there's another side to being an academic, the inquisition. So we all have to go through also serious questioning, and then we'll also have to answer questions and be as clear as possible about our arguments. Okay, now the floor is open for questions. So if anybody would ask a question to any of the panel presenters, we already have Ozan Bulut, and now I'm opening. Okay, Ozan Bulut, you can join us, Ozan.
Hello, everyone. I'll have two questions, and due to the fact that I have a class in short notice, I wish to ask them consecutively. Is that okay?
Okay, well, who are you asking them to?
First question is for Meltem Demiraran, and the second is for Ece Atlıhan.
Okay, shoot.
Meltem, you explain us how you trace Kevin Barrett's notion of agential realism in the trilogy of Van der Meer. But how do you think this notion of agential realism works in our own lives? And the second one is, as you mentioned earlier, scientific elements are used to solve human problems. What problems do they solve in Erewhon? Can you give a specific example? Thank you.
Okay, I think you just noted down the question, and I think we'll first listen to Meltem. Meltem, are you there?
Yes, Hocam, I'm here. Okay, this is a long subject, but I will try to explain it as brief as I can. First of all, when we think about science, we tend to, societies tend to explain things in this human-centric way. Like science is something, like we create things and we do stuff and we rule the earth. This is the human-centric view that humanism created and modernism mostly created. But actually, what science does is to discover things. And in the last years, there are like many researches that shows that we are not alone. Creating tools, creating communication, or communicating with other species. There's this biologist called Merlin Sheldrake. He does research in the Amazons about the fungus, and he says that they have this network called the hyphea, which is underground, and they connect with each other. The fungi connect with each other And also they help the trees to connect with each other. They share like carbons and other stuff, and they also communicate. Even the invasive kind of trees and other kind of trees, they do that too with the help of the fungi, thanks to those hyphea. And also about this matter and about this objective, about the objects which entangle to our journeys in life. Bharat gives this example. She gives this experiment as an example. The experiment is called Stern and Gerlach experiment. There's this biologist again, which is who is called Otto Stern, and they make an experiment about the phenomena of space quantization, and they try so many things, but they cannot get to the point where they want it. And then one day they realize that the smoke affects it, and they could see that beam in the palace. And the reason this all happened, Barat says that first of all, Otto Stern is a Jew who migrated from Germany to America, which you can guess why. And also, the cigarette Otto Stern smoked was a cheap one, since he could afford only the cheap cigarette because that he was a Jew and he's from a low class in the society. The cigarette contained sulfur, and it was what actually activated the what caused that beam to be seen. So everything is again entangled. I mean, if it was today, I mean, we cannot smoke in the lab. So if it was today, Otto Stern couldn't smoke in the lab, and this was not to happen. If he was not a Jew, he was not gonna smoke that cigarette. So everything is kind of entangled. I hope this all answers your question.
Okay. And the next one was.
Yes, thank you.
And the other question was to what, Ece? No.
Yes, the other one for Ece.
Ece, are you there?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, Ozan, could you please repeat the question? Ozan, we cannot hear you. Maybe you haven't.
To repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. Scientists are used to.
Oh.
As you mentioned earlier, what is?
Okay. Ece, could you hear it, or because Ozan, you disappeared?
Sort of, but I think I understand what he means.
Okay.
So basically, all the concepts that I've been discussing, they are either exaggerated or used as a mockery material, let's say. So they're not the focus of the novel. But if you were to think of, for example, the distrust of machines, let's say, because of this distrust, the unnamed narrator decides to go away with his lover upon learning the Erebonian stance. And they flee the country and live in a different place. So maybe we can say that the scientific element in this novel provides the necessity for going away and starting a new life with a loved one.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Maria Doğan is next to ask the question.
Thank you. I have a question to Kadir, to the presentation about the stalker. My question is as follows. As I understand, the main theme that unites the film and the game, I'm not very familiar with the game, is human intrusion into this hostile territory, into the zone. In the film, there is one more creature, except for the main characters, that has the free entrance to the zone, and that is the black dog that follows them along the way. Is there something similar in the game?
Well, actually, I have watched that film many times, but trying to interpret that scene is really hard because there is really no clue about that black dog. But I don't know. As I remember that scene, the stalker, the main character, was remembering it. So it was a past moment. So I don't know. I can't really relate it to the game because I can't interpret that scene.
All right. No,
Yeah.
there are a lot of interpretations. I was thinking that in the games, they're usually a dog that follows the main player and helps the player. So that was what I was thinking about.
Well, in the game, no, there isn't something like that. There are mutants, both mutant animals from the nuclear disaster, and there are also the man-made ones to keep stalkers away from the center of the zone, so that their secret wouldn't be discovered. I guess that's the closest relation I can make to that scene in the movie.
Okay.
I'm sorry I couldn't really give a clear answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we got that there's no dog in the game. Okay.
There's no some special dog, but there are dogs in the game.
Okay. Complicated. We're going to play the game and see. Ufuk hocam.
Some of our speakers, they explored humanoid robots today. When I first watched the film Ex Machina, it scared me to death. Eva's cunningness, her tricks really frightened me. So what are your projections for the future of humanoid robots with artificial intelligence? I'm asking this question to Belkıs or Kenan or any one of our speakers today. What do you think?
Maybe Belkıs can just start first.
I would like to thank for the question. And just as I had mentioned, consciousness is a very difficult term to understand within humans. There was a scene in the movie that I did not elaborate on to cut it short, but after Caleb, the innocent man, after he witnesses how human Ava is becoming, he goes to the bathroom and there's a very graphic scene where he cuts himself open and he looks at himself and he tries to make sure that he's human. I mean, he was born human. There is no reason for him to doubt this. But consciousness is a very abstract term. And when you start thinking about this, it's like trying to think about walking. It confuses you. So the future of AI is very bleak, and it's not easy to say that, oh, they will destroy us, or oh, they will just be humans, like Detroit Become Human says, or Terminator says. It's difficult because it's unpredictable. We've only seen consciousness within ourselves. We haven't seen consciousness within another being yet, although we explore it in science fiction works. So for the future of AI and what it says about humanity is very, it's terrifying. It is, it's like the fear of the unknown. And what we can do is just be aware, because they are highly unpredictable, in my opinion. Yes.
Kenan, do you have anything to add?
In addition to what Belkıs said, as Detroit Become Human argues that robots or androids should be just one of us instead of rulers or dominators on humanity. I think I'm on the same page with the game's idea. I think in the future, if it's possible for them to develop conscience, we should regard them as one of us and do not put them into superior or inferior place. And the future of artificial intelligence is, I think it will be more and more included in our daily lives. And humanoid robots will be part of the society in the future.
Even if they take our jobs or girlfriends?
I mean, we have the same problem with minorities in the history. They said the same thing.
Oh. Okay, that's an interesting connection. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Erdem, maybe you can continue. Erdem,
Yes. I have a small question to Kenan. Does the game mention Asimov laws in the game?
The game itself does not mention the Asimov's laws, but the main theme and moral message of the video game as shows androids have rights too, as I mentioned just before. They are individuals, and to count them as individuals, we should oversee the Asimov's laws, which puts them in inferior position.
Okay, maybe next question from Aylin Pekanik.
Hello, thank you so much for all of your wonderful talks. Everything I heard today was of great interest to me, but I don't want to take up your time, so I'm going to ask only one question to Belkıs Yavuz. So Ex Machina is a movie that I really love, and I did readings of it in the past. I wanted to ask you about in terms of ethics and morals. When we interact with any kind of artificial being, we judge their morals with our human morals, of course, how they treat us, how they treat others around us. But when you look at the movie, Ava is put through horrifying circumstances where a human woman might also react in a very aggressive way. Ethan actually talks about this. I don't remember the exact quote, but he says, I put Ava in this horrible situation and I gave her a lifeline in the form of Caleb, but she had to manipulate, she had to be socially and emotionally intelligent to get out. And at the end, she leaves everyone behind. But Ethan, of course, is a more overtly evil character, but I do think that Caleb also doesn't have the best of intentions in mind in terms of objectifying Ava. So when you think of human morals, we also have self-preservation instincts, we have desire for autonomy, personhood, and dignity. So a human woman placed in that situation might also just leave all of the men behind, leave them to die and get out of there. I might actually do that if I was put in that horrifying situation. So it's very interesting in that what are our morals? Is it just black and white, don't kill someone or kill someone? Or if you are put in a situation where you are dehumanized and your dignity is taken away from you, you might also react in that sense. So that's what I wanted to ask, I guess. When we look at artificial beings, when they act aggressive, when they want to try to form their personhood, and we are trying to get in the way of that, and they react in that sense, isn't that also acting in a very humane way? That's what I want to ask. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. That is very important for the movie's message. And you are correct. If it could be said that Ava's reaction was human, because if a woman was put in that situation, she has, in my opinion too, every right to murder the men and escape. But what gave me the impression that Ava was not entirely human was her treatment of Kyoko. Kyoko was also innocent and a victim in this situation. And like I said, we could consider her kin, her sister. They were created by the same man, and Kyoko was abused more. She was not given the same value Ava was given. Ava was an important project. She was kept in closure, but Kyoko was just used as a sex doll. And we don't know what she says to her. Maybe she didn't say anything. Maybe they planned. Maybe she convinced her to sacrifice herself, or maybe We don't know. It's a mystery, and that is left to our interpretation. But she leaves Kyoko there. Kyoko is not dead. Kyoko could be fixed, and she could have taken Kyoko with her. I believe she had all the information in the world to fix Kyoko. She could have taken Kyoko with her and they could have escaped together, but she didn't. And not because she's evil. I know my presentation might have come off that way, that Ava is like this, Ava is dangerous. But Ava is not good or bad. We don't know what she is exactly. Yes, her reactions are human when you look at it that way. But I think the movie focuses more on how we could not know. It's very ambiguous in that matter. But yes, it's a very interesting point. It could also be examined that way because she was abused. And it does not, the fact that she's not human does not just justify Nathan's reactions, because it says a lot about him. She's very human. And although if she's not, we are bound to perceive her that way. Him treating her like this with no remorse means that he could easily treat a real woman in this way, which is also, it shows how immoral he is. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope I was clear.
Thank you so much for your answer. I do agree in terms of, in addition to gender, the movie also has some racial dynamics that could have been more explored. Totally. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Aylin. And Dicle, please.
Hello, everyone. I would like to comment on Ufuk Hoca's question, actually. You were asking if, I think, about the future of AI. I've been, researching about this for some time. And what we were talking here about, about Eva and how her motives are morally good or ethically good, or we are taking this as in human terms. But according to Yuval Noah Harari, he made a speech lately. He's made a speech, and he said that we gave AI the power of language through ChatGPT-4, and as humans, we created like almost all our power motivations on language. Like we created money with language, we created laws with language, we created religion with language, and now we have given the language to the AI, and now we're expecting AI to act morally good or humanely, good or ethical. But I think humans are making a mistake when they think that AI, should AI be considered conscious? He says, Harari says it doesn't matter if it's conscious or not, because it has the power of manipulation. And even if it's not conscious, it can manipulate us. It has the power of manipulation of people. So that's how I see the future of the AI. I think even if it's not conscious, it doesn't need to be conscious to manipulate us. And if you give the AI the question of fixing climate change, let's say, it will probably find psychological ways of manipulating humans into the right decision that it makes, which we might not approve. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Dicle, for your contribution.
Thank you, Dicle, for your contribution.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, Shawwal Tufan.
First of all, thank you all for these presentations. I really enjoyed listening. And I have a question for Ahmet. Ahmet, I don't know if you played Cyberpunk, but the hive mind concept reminded me of the network agents that are responsible for monitoring the flow of informations, and they seem to have a shared consciousness, and they somehow work together as a group to protect the integrity of the net. They work together to monitor data flows and cyber attacks and stuff. We also, in the game, we also have the Voodoo Boys as a gang and Cyber Psychosis as separate entities as somehow collective beings. I want to ask you that, can we relate this concept of hive minds to this game in terms of these groups being a cohesive whole and they are being interconnected, or any other concept that you have mentioned?
Thank you for your questions. Actually, when we talk about cyborgs and adding to cyborgs a cloud environment, we directly reach to point of a cyborg mind in terms of defining them from physiology. And after defining them physiology, in the example, we can say, I don't play Cyberpunk, but I know Netwatch a bit. In Netwatch, you can see separate cyborgs being together in a same consciousness to protect something for flow of internet in this game. But can we say every kind of cloud environmental experience is a kind of group mind experiment? Actually, when we talk about cyborgs, yes, but categorizing them in terms of their power relations because I didn't play the game, I don't know if they are hive minds or overminds, but as far as I search on the internet, they look like hive minds. What make them hive minds is there is no idea of I in these examples. In hive minds, all subjects consider themselves as we. There is no other in the group for themselves. That's what can I say about network. That's what can I say about Netwatch in the game.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, also we are near the end of our planned time. So I would like to thank you, my students, and the dear panelists now for their very interesting presentations. And we have already received very good feedback and congratulations from other people. So repeating what I said at the beginning, so I would like to welcome you into the world of academia as new candidates, and I hope this will be a very good start for your future studies. So I wish you success, and I'm leaving the floor to Ufuk Hoca for one last time to conclude today panel and just say goodbye to you, after which we'll just go back to our miserable daily lives.
So congratulations, everybody. I thank Cem Hoca a lot for organizing this undergraduate panel at the end of the semester. And I'm really thinking that, just like Cem Hoca said, this is going to be a very good start for you all, future academics. And we're hoping to see you in our MA, PhD entrance examination very soon. We are going to hold it in July. So congratulations once again, and have a great day.
Okay. Thank you very much. We can all leave, I think, at this moment. Goodbye. Hope to see you again.